If you've ever lived in a house with more than one door leading to the street, you already know there's a strange kind of comfort in that, the idea that a stranger would have to get through two of them before they got to you. Tonight's email comes from someone who found out just how little that comfort is worth. The sender asked to stay anonymous, but from the way they wrote to us, we're fairly confident this is a student, still living at home, somewhere in India. In a house they shared with their mother, their older brother, and a father who happened to be out of town that week. This is Haunt Pulse. Here's what they sent us in their own words. They titled it simply, Most Traumatic Night Ever. It was almost 1 in the morning, and I was doing something completely ordinary. Headphones on, playing a match, waiting on matchmaking to load like it always does 2, maybe 3 minutes of nothing. So I pulled my headphones off, laid them across my neck, and started scrolling through reels to kill the time. My brother was a few feet away, watching TV. My mom was already asleep, right beside my desk. My dad was out of town. It was just the three of us, and it was quiet in that specific late-night way where every sound in the house feels a little louder than it should. Then I heard it, a screech, the exact sound our main door makes when somebody opens it. Not a house noise, not the fridge, not the fan, that door. My brother barely looked up. He said it was nothing, but I've always been the type to check. I don't know why. I just have never been able to let a sound like that go unanswered. So I got up. There's a second door in our house, the one that separates the main entrance from our bedroom hallway, and right beside it there's a window. I walked toward it without really thinking about what I was doing, and I looked out, and there was a man. Tall, thin, dressed in black. He had something tucked into the back of his jeans, a knife, I thought, though I couldn't be completely sure in that light, and he was peering through the door into our house like he was studying it. He hadn't seen me. The curtains were doing their job and the room behind me was dark, so I backed away slowly, quietly, and went straight to my brother and my mom without making a sound. That's the part I still think about, how calm I made myself be right after seeing that. My mom and my brother started calling the neighbors immediately. I went back to the window to check on him one more time, just for a second. He was coming toward our bedroom door. I don't have the words for what that felt like. We all went downstairs as fast and as quietly as we could and shut the staircase door behind us, because in a lot of houses in India, there's a door for everything, and that night I was more grateful for that than I've ever been in my life. From below, we could hear him working at the bedroom door, the one that led straight to the room with my brother's laptop, my phone, my iPad, everything of value we owned. He couldn't figure out the mechanism. That's the only reason we had any time at all. Then someone shouted at our main door. Our neighbors, 10 to 15 men, grabbed straight out of their homes with whatever they could carry, bats, sticks, anything within reach. I opened the door and we all went outside together. And that's when we saw him again. He was already on the roof. He'd gotten up there with nothing but a thin plastic pipe, and to this day I don't understand how a person climbs a wall like that. We threw whatever we could reach, pebbles, sticks, and I think we hit him, because something in the way he moved after that changed. Word spreads fast on a street like ours. More people came out, and the man ran, still on the rooftops, jumping from one to the next in the dark. In clothes made for exactly that kind of dark, and within a few minutes we couldn't see him at all. We searched for almost an hour. One neighbor got a good enough look at his face that he told us he could identify him from a photo if it ever came to that, but that night he was just gone. It was only once things had quieted down that we went back upstairs to see how he'd actually gotten in. There was no forced lock, no broken window, nothing. And I know that I had shut that main door myself, less than an hour before any of this started. There was no way he could have already been inside. We checked the room he'd had access to, the one just past the main door. Sitting in front of our family shrine, there had been somewhere between 1 and 200 rupees. Gone. And beside it, my brother's laptop, the one thing that would have actually mattered to him, left sitting untouched by the door, like he'd grabbed it and then thought better of it. Probably because of the crowd he could hear gathering outside. Here's the detail that still keeps me up at night. He was inside our house for more than 30 minutes. One of our neighbors told us later that he saw him just standing there at one point, motionless, and couldn't do anything because he didn't have our number to call. 30 minutes in a house where my mother was sleeping a few feet from where I was sitting. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every small sound in the house afterward made my whole body go rigid. The moment that plays over and over in my head isn't the rooftop or the chase or the neighbors banging on our door. It's that first second at the window, seeing him looking in through our own front door like he already knew he belonged there. It's morning now. Everyone in my family is safe. We still don't know who he was or whether he'll come back. If we find out anything more, I'll let you know. But I don't think I'll ever look at that window the same way again. That's where they left it, a house full of people who made it through the night, and a door that for a little while didn't feel like it locked anything out at all. This next email came to us from someone writing on behalf of their mother, a story passed down inside their own family, one their mother lived through as a child and has never stopped believing was real. The sender told us they have their mother's full permission to share it and asked us to treat it with the same seriousness her family always has. It takes place in Cutler, California, a small farming town most people have never heard of, in a rural house that sat, oddly enough, right next to a produce packing plant. This is Haunt Pulse. They called it My Mother's Encounter with the Devil. Before I get into what happened, I should tell you a little about the house because it matters. My mom's family had just moved in, and it wasn't until years later, after she'd already moved out, that they learned the truth about the place. The son of the man who owned the property was an addict, and for a stretch of time, he used that house for benders, the kind of benders where people didn't always walk back out. My mom has always believed that's why the house felt the way it did. Why so many things seemed to linger there. She was 7 or 8 years old when it happened, not long after they'd settled in. It started with a dog. Her sister's boyfriend had been out exploring the fields behind the house when he found it, a brown dog with striking blue eyes, tied up with a rope reeking of gasoline. He brought it back and they hosed it down outside in the yard. My grandma didn't want fleas in her house, so the dog stayed outside. But that night, while my mom sat watching TV in the living room, somebody spotted a tick buried in its fur. My grandma decided to burn it off, and she sent my mom into the kitchen to grab the matches from the cabinet. You need to picture the layout for this part to make sense. The kitchen opened straight into the dining room, and the dining room was almost entirely glass, windows curving around in a shape like a horseshoe, with a glass table sitting in the middle of it. My mom was too small to reach the cabinet on her own, so she climbed up onto the counter, which meant, for a few seconds, her back was turned completely toward that glass-walled room. She grabbed the matches. She sat there for a moment, getting ready to hop back down. And then she looked up toward the dining nook. There was something standing on the other side of the table. She described him as having one human leg and one that looked like it belonged to a horse. He wore something like a blazer, but knitted wrong somehow, the way a coat looks when it's made from the wrong material for its shape. Mostly human, but not entirely. Parts of him were animal, furred like a goat. His hands looked like hands, human enough except for the nails. Not overgrown, almost groomed, she said, shaped strangely like the tip of a candy corn. His face was thin, his eyes sat too deep in his skull. And when she tried to describe his expression, all she could ever come up with was one word. That's evil. She told me it felt like time had actually stopped. The air went thick the second their eyes met. He raised one hand and curled his finger toward himself, beckoning her closer. She swears she could hear him, clear as anything, telling her to come, even though his mouth never moved once. She tried to answer, nothing came out. All she could do was shake her head, side to side, refusing. He curled his finger again, slower this time, and he started nodding as if to answer for her, as if to say yes anyway. My grandma eventually noticed my mom had been gone far longer than a trip for matches should take and went to check on her. The moment my grandma stepped into the kitchen, my mom spun toward her, pointing frantically toward the dining room, unable to say a single word. My grandma later said my mom's skin was burning hot to the touch, and at the same time, she was shaking like she'd been standing out in the cold. It took a while before my mom could finally get the sentence out, "There's a man in the dining room." My grandma's first thought was a break-in. She and my uncle grabbed a bat and swept the backyard looking for an intruder. It wasn't until my mom described him properly, one regular leg, one animal leg, that my grandma understood what she was actually describing. That's my mother's story, and to this day, she believes it completely. If anyone reading this has another explanation for what she saw standing across that glass table, we'd genuinely like to hear it. Some doors, it seems, don't need to be open to let something look in. That's where she left it.